Okay, so now you're going to talk about your science class.
All right, yeah, so I've done this. It's a very different looking design process from what I've shown you before, and that's because we're integrating sociological concepts, including things like active network theory and network maps, and we're also incorporating a lot of talk about how science interplays with the environment and technology and society, right? So in Ontario, that's a big portion of the science curriculum called STSE, like Science, Technology, Society, and the Environment Studies, and that's supposed to be integrated in science no matter which grade you take and which level of science. So it's kind of like it's not more than just the nature of science, but it's more supposed to be about the social implications of science and what we end up getting from it. Now, historically in science, it ends up being something like we're in chemistry class, we may have learned about metals or alkaline earth metals, and then there'll be a chapter in the textbook on look at metal mining, it's bad for you, right? And that's unfortunately all that it is. So maybe the majority of teachers or some teachers will just have like a reading, we answered 5 questions, okay, you've done your STSE component, right? And it ends up kind of creating a very superficial understanding of things, and it also, I would argue, leads to scientism, which is something we kind of want to steer away from, where it's kind of like the notion that science is like the ultimate and only answer to all of the world's problems, and as long as we just pursue science as a discipline, we'll always arrive at the morally, ecologically, and naturally right answer to everything, which is perhaps not what we've seen over the course of time. Anyways, so this process is I'll try to kind of explain some of the extra sociology and the extra science that's kind of embedded in this design process, okay? So this is called Wise Tech Design, and this is really the brainchild of Dr. Larry Bentz in the University of Toronto and the teacher education program there. He's a science teacher educator. He's a professor emeritus, so you can find him on Twitter and stuff like that, and you can learn more about this process called the Wise Tech Design process, right? It's actually still kind of quite new. This is in a series. What I'll show you is essentially the process, kind of how we go through it in steps, how it's going to be pulling into talking about science, technology, society, and the environment, and how that's kind of embedded into that design process, and also how the nature of science itself and the scientific method is also embedded in the process more perhaps than those traditional cyclical design kind of thinking type processes. Okay, so you're looking for both of those things. So the first thing I'm going to show you, and this is maybe an example that's kind of an artificial example that I've used to take kids through the process, right? So the first thing I have kids make is essentially something called the world sign image. And this is borrowed from sociology, where we use something called actor network theory to map out interrelationships that a product may have. And it also has another important concept called semiotics. Semiotics are signs and symbols traditionally used to sell. So the example that I give is, let's say we were going to create a hair dye, right? Let's say in this case it'll be, or we think about hair dyes in general. Hair dyes in general, when we see advertisements, they'll have these desirable endpoints, these results that we want. So you see the people in the models and the advertisements, their hair dyes have a very natural color, their hair has a soft texture, it has very, very shiny hair. You'll see these images that make you believe or think in a certain way. So there'll be things like, oh, it's sexy looking, or it's alluring, or it's soft. I may see natural products like olives, which make you think that it's natural and good for you, something like that, right? So from here, we're going to get the result variables from the product that we want. Now, a lot of times advertisements will intentionally hide, and this is kind of where some of the sociology comes from, some of the compromised realities of the fact that those products exist. So you were made to think about the desirable shiny hair, and you won't realize that, oh, many of the ingredients inside the hair dye may have these negative science, technology, society, or the environment effects. It could be that the shea butter is grown in the products are made in a way that's not environmentally friendly. They may have skin allergies that are not apparent and not obvious, right? So what we have them do is, in making this map, right, I give them one that is blank. They have to fill out one and populate it kind of with images through their own research. So they're trying essentially to grab things that they want to eliminate and discover what some of the things that are kind of hidden in that product are when they're going to be creating their own product, right? The other way they would do this is because this is essentially a product where they're reformulating a currently existing idea. So they're making a new hair dye that is more environmentally friendly. You can do the same sort of thing with a new solution to a new problem, as long as you have some of the bad effects of that problem on the world side. Okay? Then what they would do is they would get these result variables, these things that they want in their product, and they put it into a matrix. So through iteration and experimentation, they discover that in making a product, there's always compromise. So let's say they're making that hair dye and they find out they want to have the softest possible hair. And they find out if they only use more sulfates, there'll be a softer texture, right? But perhaps if they use too much sulfates, or sulfates are too much of an ingredient, let's say as a percentage, it may have a negative effect on the coloring products of that dye, right? So with this, we have this notion that in all design, it's not just simply a matter of getting better and better and better and better. It's a fact that there are trade-offs in the things that we make. And the way that the certain properties are for the products are the way that they are, but because companies have chosen to prioritize different things. So the interplay is heavily with science, society, and often the environment. So for instance, your cell phone company, your cell phone may be getting thinner and thinner and thinner each year as the technology improves to make the glass stronger, but also perhaps the battery life is getting worse from year to year to year to year. Maybe 1 year it can survive a drop from 2 meters, but now we've made them so thin, I don't want to drop my phone like this far without, fear of breaking it, right? As we make thinner and thinner and thinner phones. So, and also as you can see here, what I've had them do when they make theirs, they have to have the result variables that they want in their product, and then I've made sure that 2 of the variables are ones where they have to take into account science, technology, society, the environment, or STSE. So they are essentially developing a new product, and they must take into account these different interplays in things that in commercial products they may not be able to do all the time, right? And they also have to explain their variables. Yeah, so one other thing that we have been trying to incorporate this semester into science is the notion of many objects having a hidden message, which may lead to a future vision being promoted by the designer, but it's one that isn't often apparent, right? So this is based on some sociological concepts that are tied into active network theory. If you look like the actual names of them are inscriptions. That was what hidden messages are, and what the future visions are, socio-technical imaginaries. All right, so the example I've been talking about is this hair dye example, right? So the idea of a hidden message, right, is something you've incorporated into your design which makes the user behave in a certain way that's desirable for you, right? So the example that I gave you, that I created for them, as I said, most hair dyes are shipped inside of a bottle. That's great. You mix the stuff in the bottle, and you throw everything away. There's a lot of waste plastic. What if instead it didn't come with an entire bottle? It came just in let's say a bag which is very thin, perhaps recyclable. It'd take up less space in the landfill if you do throw it away. But then it comes with a small little bottle top that can be, let's say, added onto, let's say, a drinking bottle type container. That would be the applicator top. So you could reuse plastic waste already inside your home one more time, and the entire product ends up being greener. So it doesn't give you a bottle, and it makes you act in a way that's what a hidden message or an inscription is, right? And that leads to a different vision of the future for the product, which would be that hopefully in this new vision of the future that I would have, more products would be like mine, promote, let's say, green and healthier version of living where we reuse more material, for instance, right? So because of this, and this particular example, I did in fact have much better products this year. This was a student who created her own lip balm. So these are all the ingredients. She took all these pictures, it looks great, of all the ingredients that she happened to use to make her lip balm. And she designed her own little cute little container. But then she said, it's not good enough that we only use the container once. So I've designed this formula so that it's solid, and then you can easily microwave it at a certain temperature. So I changed the ingredients. You microwave this, then you can pour it into the container multiple times. So you end up selling someone the little pucks, and you only sell them the package once, right? So that's again how you get the notion of a hidden message, contributing to a different vision of the future. All right, you probably can't see it extremely well, but that's okay. But this is a world sign image that a student made when she was doing her invention. So her invention, she did some research and realized that she wanted to have a product that could incubate the eggs of chickens in developing community. So she couldn't make something that was like a commercial product that was going to be like in the $6,000 chicken incubator. She wanted to make something that would have been available almost out of like waste materials in the developing world, right? So she figured all these results that she wanted, and then also some negative aspects, right, of products that already existed, right? She went ahead and made that matrix where she was looking at result variables and the cause variables, negative and positive effects. And then she ended up explaining her variables. And a big part of doing the research for this, and that's actually a shot of her chicken incubator that you can see, is that we make something as well called a network map. Okay, so this is related closely to actor network theory. And in many types of design thinking, you typically have to worry about stakeholders. So actor network theory is based on the work of Latour, mostly, would have been actually a sociologist, but it was kind of like sociology about the scientific method, about science. So he essentially stated that there are stakeholders in a network, but the stakeholders could be both abiotic or biotic things, so non-living or living things, all acting in a network that all have agency or can all affect each other. So the example that you could perhaps give is if you look at my hair dye, and let's say the hair dye example that we were talking about, there are reasons why not all hair dye are made out of completely natural products that would be environmentally friendly or easier on your skin. It could have things to do with we want a product that has greater longevity. We want a wider variety of colors, right? But also there's huge groups that can act together with commercial interests. So for instance, there may be huge cosmetic companies that are multinationals that have an interest and have a wider effect on huge populations of people, which make change extremely hard. So what I wanted students to be able to do is I wanted them to map out what does it look like for their product? What kind of influence would their product have on the world, in this case, of chicken incubators? And then she would actually have to do research and say, okay, what companies are actively making chicken incubators and how do they work together, right? And what effects do these companies have on companies that are in related industries? So for instance, if there's a chicken incubator company, are they related and working with larger farming companies? Are they working with mining companies to get raw materials? Are they working with manufacturers? Are they working with distributors? Because the bigger the network, the more power there is. So it was important in our science courses that we wanted to give kids the knowledge in terms of STSE, or Science, Technology, and Engineering Society, that it can be sometimes hard to change the world because there are vast like stakeholders that act together in networks. And that's from essentially that actor network theory. And I've had in past courses, when kids make large maps like this, they have been able to make more positive changes in their own lives, and they end up liking it. I had a student who did a project on fluoridation of water. She entered the project thinking fluoridation was bad because she had a YouTube conspiracy star that she loved, and he had a lot of YouTube conspiracy videos about how fluoridation was bad. She said in making that network map, she realized he was getting funded by anti-fluoridation companies, and it made her change her own mind to being something perhaps more progressive and better for her own health. But she wouldn't have done so unless she'd been able to put together the research in a systematic way to uncover the web of interactions to make her understand why he even existed in the first place, where her money was coming from. So using a network map in this way can give kids a bigger understanding and have them make sense. It looks just like a mind map, essentially, but that's not what it is, because instead of a mind map just being these interconnected ideas, you're trying to chart the movement of power, influence, or money, and uncovering the network that are all going to be interactions and power based.